Well, I recently addressed this question in a short essay on my Substack, which is linked below, but I'd like to fill it out a little bit more in this video. I seldom receive correspondence from graduate students, but this week was an exception, as was last week. After publishing my video and the essay on why I left Harvard, I received about a dozen messages and emails from mostly prospective graduate students, but some graduate students who wanted to know, is it even worth pursuing a PhD in literature right now? And kind of more broadly, is it worth getting a PhD in the humanities right now? And the way I answer that question is I would get my literature PhD again, even in 2025. Here's why, along with a few very serious caveats. I would do it if you have a good reason for why you plan to dedicate the next 3 to 6 years of your life to the study of the humanities for a PhD. Stop and consider, why am I doing this? Personally, my journey to graduate school was propelled, really, by a certain spiritual and aesthetic experience, or a set of spiritual and aesthetic experiences that I had in nature at a very young age. I spent a good deal of my time in the woods and along the creeks and found myself drawn inexplicably to beauty in nature. And I wanted to understand what the beauty meant, what it seemed to be pointing to. And after Hurricane Katrina leveled the woods and displaced me, I spent my teenage years searching for what I believe I had lost in those woods until I discovered answers in theology and literature, especially the poetry of the Romantic poets. So I eventually worked my way through community college as a gardener and made my way slowly to graduate school where my journey led me. But the point is that your work should answer or address something fundamental about your life and your human experience. It should be connected to a deep interest or your own question about meaning in life. For me, it was spiritual. It was a spiritual question. For you, it might be something very different. It might have to do with your place in society or something completely different than what it was for me. But the main thing I would say is when you get into a PhD program in the humanities, you should be writing from that place of experience or that unresolved tension or the asking of a certain question. Don't go in trying to write a fashionable dissertation for the sake of being fashionable. We've had a lot of that. Eco-material deconstructions of heteronormative fetishizations in the 18th century mock epic may be a really sexy title for the MLA conference, but its immediate relevance upon human life and experience is not going to be readily apparent to those outside the academy. And even in my case, inside the academy, the meaning and relevance would not be immediately apparent either. So be prepared to explain and revise your work to make it intelligible and connecting to these deeper issues. And dissertations are very specific, and they should be, because you're furthering a very specific point of knowledge. So I'm not criticizing that, but it should have some relevance to the whole human experience. And this leads me to my second point. As I said, PhD dissertations are supposed to be narrow, but they should always be grounded in what is enduring. So the best way to be both relevant and enduring, I think, is to be true to your own search. In doing so, you'll be true to the heart of the humanities. You're going to dedicate hours of breaths and heartbeats to a serious inquiry, as a friend of mine once put it. Make sure you're doing it for you and not to please your advisors, the job market, or any of the latest ideological trends. Make sure it's really grounded in your interests. And remember that the humanities operate according to higher laws than those of the present culture wars. And for American academics, or American graduate students in particular, who are always being lured into the rocks by ideological sirens, it is important to remember that the humanities are nonpartisan. There was a time when the humanities had been heavily politicized by ideology, mostly from the left, and then by the right in a knee-jerk reaction, and we're left still reckoning with the aftermath of that. But the essential thing is that the humanities should be a bridge between the academy and the public, and it should be a bridge between the left and the right. The humanities teach us how to reason, to persuade, to dialogue, to imagine greatness for the nations and the societies we inhabit. The great thing about the humanities is that they are always relevant, always enduring, and always answering the same questions in new ways. I think that's really important to remember. So the third thing I would say is, if you're going to do a PhD in the humanities, be prepared to publicly engage. As the tides of anti-intellectualism rise, it's important that those within the academy respond with openness and readiness to show their worth and to show their work. Don't resign yourself to the academic scorn of public interest. In recent decades, there's grown resentment among some academics about the need to justify their work to the broader public. As a humanist, you should always be ready to give an answer for your work, and that's going to have to be a part of the future. You can't hide under the shelter of obscurity and jargon. You have to come up with ideas, something that's valuable, and then put them out into the world to be judged by it. You say, here's my work, here am I, judge me, and be prepared for those judgments. Some judgments from the world will not be very helpful or worth very much. Others will. But you have to have the courage to be judged and to put your work out there. The academy has grown insular in its economy of approval in a way that in some places it looks like a cult. But do what you can to push against those attitudes. Stop thinking of the academy as a tower. Think of it as a living room, a salon where you host friends for conversations, get to know people, understand what people are thinking out in the world, your neighbors. Know that your life as an academic will require some level of hospitality. And it's hospitality to students that you'll be teaching, hopefully, to your fellow academics in other fields, to your family who want to know what it is you're doing all the time at the university while you're still in school, and for those people who are in professions that don't allow for the kind of reading time that you will be privileged to. The role of the academic should be one of service and sacrifice. Do it for yourself, but don't do it for yourself alone. Do it for everyone else, too. Next, I would say, if it's a PhD program, a long PhD program, it's going to be very important for you to find financial support. I think you should get a PhD in the humanities only if it's financially viable for you. Many PhD programs in the U.S. are fully funded, especially the top ones. That means they waive tuition and they provide a stipend. I had no money. As a young graduate student in the master's program, which also was fully funded, so that meant that I had to find a PhD program that would pay me to be there. And programs will do this. It makes sense for programs, I think, to do this. It's a vestige of the old belief that professionalizing humanists is good for society, because ideally they'll go back out into the world and share their knowledge and their skills and put it to new and creative use. So, if you're getting a world-class education for free, make sure you pay the universe back by giving back to others and doing something good with it. But whether or not it is financially wise to get a PhD is really going to depend on your own circumstances. The calculation gets darker here because many people will not find a fully funded option available to them. In some countries or in smaller departments, students may have to take on partial funding or even some debt to pursue a PhD. This is not something I did. I don't want to give somebody advice on something that I haven't done. It makes the decision riskier and more personal, and I can't really speak to it. I would say that even with the funding that most programs give you, living on years of low stipends, the opportunity costs may be too high. And I'm not averse to taking on a little debt for education. People sometimes take on debt for good reasons, for houses, property, transportation. Where I grew up, It's socially acceptable to take out a 6-figure loan for a monster truck, but college loans are a joke. And that's fine. It just depends on your own means and priorities. Whether it's a truck or a humanities degree, you really shouldn't be getting into debt that you can't pay off. So the key is to enter the program with eyes wide open, to understand the financial risks, but also the health, emotional, psychological risks that might be involved. And you may decide that there are other non-academic routes that will allow you to pursue your commitment to the humanities. You are the best judge of that. The bottom line is, do not hurt yourself. Now, the 5th and most important thing I'll say is to love. Do not go into a PhD program and study a subject that you do not love. You have to love the arts, love the novels, love the history, love the philosophy. You must be moved by love, a love for the human heart and for all of its desires and paradoxes and questions. What else is there in life than this? We've had decades of deconstruction and interrogation and even hostility and scorn toward literature. While critique is important and will always be necessary and warranted, you should only criticize the things you love, as C.S. Lewis once wrote. If you tear something down or deconstruct something, you must also be prepared to imagine and construct something better, or to provide some kind of antidote, some kind of alternative. Reading means it's spending precious time in the company of the wise. Learn from them. Point others to them. Balance the rigor of a scholar with the passion of a lover. Don't worry about being what people on YouTube call cringe or what academics call naive. A lover is never embarrassed. And if you can do these things, you'll end up doing good in the long run in a PhD program, even if you don't attain an academic position. There's much you can do with humanities PhD, including teaching high school or even elementary or middle school. Now, the main reason why I would get a PhD in the humanities, even now, even in 2025, is this. Apart from the fact that within our secular consumerist society, the humanities are the last bulwark standing between us and a technocratic culture of death, I think that the humanities will soon see a renaissance. I understand how this may seem ludicrous, especially now, at the moment, but hear me out. It's my personal belief that the world is going to need humanists again very soon. Right now may be a bad time to be entering the job market and leaving a PhD program in the humanities, but this might be the very moment in which is a good time to begin a humanities degree. In a few years or so, after culture is utterly exhausted by AI content, empty and manipulative rhetoric, incoherent public discourse, and violence, then I think the world will be hungry for functioning human beings who are good at what human beings do. They'll be needing people who actually know how to speak, to write, to create, to give to others, and to cultivate relationships, and just simply to be a good friend. And anybody can do these things. You don't have to be in a PhD program to do that, but I think there's great worth in professionalizing the humanities, to have a select few who are professionals, who are given the time to read from the great and to share the greats. And the world will soon know they've needed these humanists all along. So if you can do it without hurting yourself, enter a humanities PhD program, even now. The world needs more of what the humanities give. So I hope that was helpful. Time will tell how this ages, but thanks for the questions, and thanks for watching.